When I come around, got the whole thing wobbin', wobbin'.
Hello, guys, and welcome back to MVP Sports. This is our NFL Football Edition podcast, and here, as always, your host G, and with my good friend, my co-host Darius. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, bro? Let's get into it.
Yep. Let's start off with some headlines, and before we get into that, our condolences and our prayers go out to the victims and the families affected by the Santa Fe High School shooting. Literally within 30 to 40 minutes of where me and Darius live, and it's such a sad thing to know that it happened this close, but also around the country it's been happening quite more often than it should. And the things that we want to say is, if you see any sort of suspicious activity in your high school, in your college, at your workplace, or no matter where, please feel free to warn an adult, an authority figure at all about, of these events, to prevent them from happening and to prevent any sort of death or any sort of injuries from happening, because it's better to be safe than it is to be sorry. And to go along with this, J.J. Watt is willing to pay for the victims of the funeral service, and J.J. Watt, yet again, coming through for the city of Houston. And, every time tragedy strikes in the season, he's always been that beacon of hope.
Yeah.
And he's been there. He was the beacon of hope to help us get, over the top in playoff wins, for the Texans and for the city of Houston. And even though we may not be fans of the team, I can be sure as hell a fan of him, because he's a guy that every owner of a team would want to have him.
Any family will want. Like, he's just a good dude, doing stuff like that when he doesn't have to, and he's just a great guy overall.
The one thing that really I like about him is just like most of these players, they all tweet out, they make a public statement, all the tragedy and all the people that may have went to that high school and stuff. But what does he do?
He's out here doing stuff.
He out there when everybody was saying, the tragedy of Hurricane Harvey, he raised $37 million. He does something about that. He did volunteer service to help it out.
Yeah, he's not just saying pray for these people. He's out here
answering
their prayers. He's not out here just, pray for this, pray for that. He's just,
he's out here making a commitment, volunteering a commitment to service, and and just an upstanding guy for all that. But yep, he goes out here and he's now he will to pay for the victims and their funeral service. Now on to the next subject. No more somber notes. Now let's be upbeat and happy. From one extreme to the other, we have Johnny Manziel goes to the Canadian Football League.
Johnny Football
back at it again. Now here's the thing. I think a lot of ex-NFL not even superstars, but guys who had big names, because him, Vince Young, Jamarcus Russell, guys who were world known for their name and what they were in high school or in college, were super hyped up, and they just looked at the Canadian Football League as a joke. Like, they would say, it's not the NFL, it ain't serious, I don't want to play.
Man, I'm above that, man.
Yeah,
I'm too cool for all of that stuff.
No, and they look at it the same way as, some people look at community college. It's community college. It's not a real university. But at the same time, it's better than nothing.
Cam Newton went to a junior college.
Yeah. And so, but at the same time, Warren Moon was highly, was undrafted, wasn't even talked to, said he wasn't, all these bad reports about him, and it was completely falsified statements backed on because based on the color of his skin. They say he wasn't smart, he wasn't athletic, and didn't have a strong arm. Yep. Warren Moon is known as having the strongest arms in all of NFL history. Just because the NFL didn't call him up, that didn't mean he gave up. He just went to somewhere that wanted his talents.
Yep.
And at the same time, if you ball out and if you perform well at a competitive level, the NFL will look at you and will give you a chance. And I think Johnny Manziel is being real smart with this. Now, granted, it's never too late, though. And guys like Vince Young, Jamarcus Russell, any of these quarterbacks who just got out the league, that's an opportunity that, because one, you're more than likely going to be a bit more gifted and more athletically, gifted than all those guys out there in Canadian Football League. You know, you may already have an edge over everybody else. You know, a guy like if Colin Kaepernick really wanted to play football and really prove himself, there's no doubt about it. He can win a Grey Cup, which is their equivalent of a Super Bowl out there. And I really think that a lot of ex-players, ex-QBs, you know, should look at that as an alternative to prove themselves. Because because it is the second most competitive league until the NFL makes a different league or NFL Europe or something like that in the past. Until then, I think the CFL, it's always looked down upon just because it's, I'm not getting paid as much as I deserve. Well, maybe that's the reason why you're not getting looked at is because you're worried too much about money or you're too worried about your status, you know. And once you put that aside and you're worried about playing ball, you know, then you'll get looked at by a team, and then you'll be given the opportunity to play.
CFL lives matter too.
Exactly. CFL lives matter too. Now, speaking of an ex-Brown, the Cleveland Browns have decided that they're going to be on Hard Knocks this year.
Oh, wow. I can't wait.
Now we get to see the incompetence and the behind-the-scenes footage of how
a team goes 0-16.
But you know what? There's nowhere to go but up, to be quite honest.
This is true.
And you know, it's gonna be fun. You get to see Baker Mayfield, your number 1 overall pick, in action. You get to see some would say this is the turning point of the franchise. This is finally where they acquired all this picks. They acquired all
Jarvis Landry.
They did all these offseason moves. They were saying they're winning the offseason because they're doing, you know, getting Tyrod Taylor to be their bridge quarterback to help, you know, pass the baton. You know, because already getting Tyrod Taylor, I mean, you have to win at least one game.
You have to get better at
least.
There's
nowhere to go but up. And getting rid of Deshaun Kaiser was also pretty smart because not only did you get an asset back from it, but you're also saying, you know, like there's not a competition between last year's QB and then now Baker Mayfield. It's just, hey, it's Baker Mayfield and Tyrod Taylor.
He's the man. It's too bad Joe Thomas
finally kicked the bucket. You know, not kicked the bucket, but retired. You know, and they got the quarterback they said they believe in. But it is what it is. And now it'll be interesting to see how fun this Hard Knocks is going to be. Obviously, Hard Knocks is always entertainment to see. Last year was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they didn't really perform well on the field, but they were pretty entertaining to watch there. We had the Texans. We have had the Rams when they went to LA. The Cowboys have always been interesting.
Yep.
But
now we get to see Cleveland Browns on Comedy Central Hard Knocks.
Pretty much. Both on and off the field. Then, other than that, Julio Jones is taking an updated contract. This doesn't surprise me because when a big-time NFL guy, like, usually when these receivers, they all kind of compete with one another both on and off the field. When somebody gets a contract, like Jarvis Landry just recently got paid. He got a huge contract. And mind you, he has one of the worst yards per catch ratios of all time. He catches like over 100 balls a year, like in the 110s to 120 range, but hardly gets over 1,000 yards receiving.
Wow.
Where a guy like Ted Ginn catches only 55 balls a season and has 1,100 yards receiving. You know, so it's kind of like you can understand where Julio Jones and guys who are now getting underpaid compared to him. They're like, you're telling me this guy is getting top 5 wide receiver money.
Even his best friend, Odell Beckham Jr. He's still waiting on his bag too.
Yeah, and but at the same time, when you're under that rookie contract, it's hard to, negotiate that because the team kind of has the upper hand in that situation. It's like, hey, if you don't play for us, you don't play for us, or we can trade you if you really don't want to sign with us, which a lot of people predicted he was going to go to the Rams or to a different team because they felt like he was too much of a head case and, in the team direction. But now that they are moving into a different direction and trying to compete, having Saquon Barkley, and they feel like they can make a Super Bowl run. But we'll get into their power rankings once we get to theirs.
Yeah.
But yeah, Julio Jones deservingly, first of all, should get paid like a top 2 guy.
Of course.
There's no doubt about that.
I mean, it's Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and then everyone else, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I mean, that some may argue that there are other guys too, but he's well deserving of an upgrade to his contract. Now, speaking of other wide receivers that played in the NFC South, Vincent Jackson retired, and coming back from last podcast we talked about, I believe it was D'Angelo Hall retiring.
Yep.
And now Vincent Jackson retires. He played with the Chargers and the Buccaneers, more so with the Chargers. Relatively unknown guy. He came out of Colorado State, balled out big time for San Diego, went out and got paid really well at Tampa Bay. And then they had those two big wide receivers. They had him, Mike Evans, both those 6'5" guys. Pretty much had a basketball team.
Basically.
Out there. But, he
small forwards on the field.
Pretty much. And, but he had a pretty good career, Hall of Fame worthy. I mean, we ask this every time somebody retires, and this is a no. This is a definite no for me.
It's a no for me, dog.
Because if you look, he played in the 2000s, like I always say about when a player retires, you got to compare him to the other receivers at the time. Reggie Wayne, he ain't better than him.
Not even close.
Terrell Owens, nope.
No.
I mean, you could almost argue like even guys like Chad Ochocinco are like better than him. Andre Johnson, definitely. Randy Moss, who also played relatively in the same.
One of the GOATs.
Yeah. And so it's, and other receivers also throughout, the league are still, that we haven't mentioned, that are relatively a bit better than him. And those are the guys that to me are Hall of Fame worthy or already in the Hall.
Yep. He had a good career, that's
that's all you can ask.
Some people.
Yeah, and he made his money, made his bones, and and had a great career in the NFL. And the fact that he had the opportunity to play, some people are just blessed.
Yep, what they say, NFL stands for not for long. He played for a long time, so hey, that's
I believe over 10 years. He played in the league for over 10 years.
Oh, yeah, because I remember hearing about him when I was a kid. So
yeah, when he was with the Chargers.
Yep.
Speaking of other receivers as well, Terrell Owens is surprised that Jason Garrett is still the head coach with the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm not surprised to hear that from Terrell Owens.
Yeah, of course. Terrell Owens, obviously, just loves to talk all the time, wants to be in the spotlight even when he's not in the spotlight.
Of course.
Every time he has a workout video, he always says he's coming back, comeback season. But let me tell you this about Terrell Owens. If you ever seen his work ethic and you ever seen how hard he works, he does look like he can play. Now, the only problem is he looks like it, but we may not think he can play. But at the same time, if the Browns went 0-16, I'm pretty sure he would at least been a competent receiver on the team.
He could at least get 3 touchdowns in 1 year.
Oh, probably so. But he's not surprised that Garrett is still the head coach. Some Cowboy fans are also maybe surprised about that too, and I'm not surprised that he's still the head coach because, the owner, Jerry Jones, tends to hire his boys, people who will listen to him. Yeah. And Jason Garrett is just like, it's kind of like that's the coach's son. Yeah. Jerry Jones is the coach, and that's the coach's son. He listens to Jerry and whatever Jerry says, and that's what goes.
Yeah.
So that doesn't surprise me that Terrell Owens is upset. Terrell Owens is probably going to say that he should be the head coach next time, and he could take Dak Prescott to a Super Bowl or whatnot.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say.
Yeah. But that's it for headlines. Now, we move on to our top 10 offensive tackles. And the reason why we did this is last week we did edge rushers. Guys who sack the quarterback. Now we got to talk about the guys who protect the quarterback. The guys they mostly go heads up against, too.
One of the hardest jobs probably in the National Football
And
League.
the most unrecognized, as we saw. I mean, we came up with this list. Both me and you texted off, the off screen, and we're saying how hard it is to come up with names, but then once we found some names, it was like, dang, there's some guys that I did not put on this list. I'll start it off as usual, 10 through 6. Jason Peters at number 10. I mean, to me, bona fide, was it one of the best left tackles in the game. The reason why he's this low is because of injuries, and I don't know how he's gonna bounce back. Because he's dealt with injuries and bounced back beforehand, that's no problem with that. It's just the fact that he's I believe, 34 years old. He's getting up there in age, and I don't know how well he can come back from this injury at being that old. Number 9, I have Jake Matthews. The Atlanta Falcons got a good franchise left tackle there. Now, granted, he's sometimes known for the holding he did in a Super Bowl.
Let's not go there.
Of course not. But at the same time, he's still one of the premier left tackles in the game. He's very relatively young, bright future ahead of him, and he comes from NFL bloodlines. You cannot pass that up. The Matthews family, to me, are, we can have this later discussion, I think that's the NFL's football family. How many pros they have based on that family. Everybody talks about the Mannings. Everybody talks about the Mannings, but last time I checked, there's only 3 of them, and the Matthews have like 10. Exactly. You know, like easily. There's Jake Matthews at 9. Then I have David Bakhtiari at 8 for the Green Bay Packers. Also, very underrated guy. Came out of nowhere, was a bit underrated in the draft class. Came out of Colorado State. I believe I would have to check on that. And he's been a great left tackle for them for the longest. They've been needing an upgrade at offensive line to help protect Aaron Rodgers. It's somewhat diminished after his Super Bowl run, you know, and same with their running back play. They still haven't gone to that, but we'll get into that later when we do our NFC North power rankings after this list. At 7, I have Cam Robinson, the rookie at Jacksonville, helped pave the way for Leonard Fournette. Really helped Blake Bortles not get sacked. You know, they put him in great positions to be at a left tackle. He's a very good run blocker, and can also hold his own in the pass protection as well. Number 6, and the other Eagle on this list, Lane Johnson. One of the most athletic right tackles there is in this game. I mean, they were joking about it in his draft class that technically he was the first quarterback taken because he played quarterback at Oklahoma. Then moved the tight end, then he just kept getting bigger and bigger. And next thing you know, he was playing tackle at Oklahoma. Very athletic, very, very strong, right tackle there is. The Eagles have such a good, offensive line and such a good two bookend tackles to help protect their quarterback, whether it's Carson Wentz or Nick Foles, who may still be playing there due to Carson's injury and his recovery time. Okay. But that's my 10 through 6. What's your 10 through 6? All
right, my 10 through 6, starting at number 10, I got to put my man Jake Matthews in there, starting left tackle, Atlanta Falcons. Piggybacking off of what you said, he's a nice little addition to the Falcons roster. Definitely added some protection to franchise QB Matty Ice. So, Jake Matthews, he's not perfect like anyone else. He's made some mistakes in the biggest moment of his lives, but, it happens though, Jake Matthews, solid tackle, and he's just going to get better and better as years go on. Number 9, I have Alejandro Villanueva.
Right, the guy who not only protects his quarterback, but has protected this nation as serving in the Army.
As an Army Ranger.
Wow, that's one tough SOB.
Yeah, this guy's a real deal, Just like out of respect, I had to put this guy in the top 10 on my
and not only just based on respect, he is, even though I may not have him on the list, as you may see, 5 through 1, I still believe he is a good tackle. These are one of the tackles that I said that I had to have left off my list. Yeah. Just based on, some of these guys, I just think entering into the 2018 season, this is a projection of entering the season, how good these guys are, and I do believe that these guys, even though I may put him above Jason Peters, just because Jason Peters was hurt and entering the season, he may still have recovery time. I don't know how well he'll do it, but you can make the argument that, yes, he does belong in the top 10 list.
Yep, no doubt. He's a solid player, definitely a hero. Number 8, we got Joe Staley in there, kind of an old head, but I threw him in the mix.
Very consistent there. He's always been the consistent factor there at San Francisco.
Definitely. He's seen a lot of quarterbacks come in and out of that place, and hopefully he's got a up-and-coming superstar in Jimmy Garoppolo to protect.
Yep.
So, we got Joe Staley, 8. Number 7, I got Lane Johnson, and number 6, I got Jason Peters. I love these Eagles tackles. I know Jason Peters got hurt, but I'm hoping he's going to bounce back and continue to protect Carson Wentz next year. And Lane Johnson, outstanding tackle, protecting Carson Wentz, helping
the run game.
Nick Foles out, win the Super Bowl. Nick Foles beating Tom Brady. Lane Johnson. Think about it. Nick Foles was like barely even touched in that Super Bowl.
That's true. They did help open up and did a lot of great play calling as well with that team. My thing is, my argument was with Jason Peters. Believe it or not, when I started this list, he was at high as number 2 for me, starting off, because I thought if you would just get rid of the injury, because he's felt with injuries most of his career. He's arguably, now that Joe Thomas is gone, because if Joe Thomas was still playing, both me and you, I would have said this, he would have been the number 1 tackle still to this day.
Definitely.
But Jason Peters should be as high as 2, because I think arguably if he wasn't hurt, he would be the best left tackle, almost the best left tackle, or in the conversation of the best left tackle right now in all of the NFL.
Yep.
Again, those are the two guys. You have the 2 Eagles, so pretty much me and you are relatively. We have 3 players similar in our bottom 5. Now 5 through 1, I have Ryan Ramczyk, another rookie on here. Rookie out of Wisconsin. Believe he was the 29th pick for the New Orleans Saints. And one of the key things helping turning this team around. Great run blocker. A lot of people were doubting his commitment to football, believe it or not. That's why he fell so low in that draft class, because they felt like he didn't have passion for the game.
Wow.
And let me tell you this, you can quite see it now that he does. He helped pave the way for that running attack that they have there. Helped protected Drew Brees on the right side. I believe he's only a right tackle now that Zach Strief is gone, but they do have Armstead there for their left tackle, so I do believe that they are relatively set there for their offensive line. Number 4, Nate Solder, he got paid. That's the number 1 thing. I believe he's the highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL right now with the New York Giants. He was with the New England Patriots, and he's a guy, came in very tall. He's 6'8", big dude, but he's also very smooth and very athletic at 6'8". Usually with taller tackles, the biggest problem they have with them is the fact that they don't get enough leverage. That smaller guys can bend around them faster, or they can, bull rush them and jack them up, easily because they're so tall. But he's so smooth and able to bend, and also his long arm reach. He's able to, if somebody were to bend around him, he's able to stick out those long arms, and prevent them from getting to the quarterback.
Yep.
Now, sometimes they may have been called in a holding call,
Yep.
but at the same time, as they say, there's holding on every single down sometimes in the NFL.
Definitely.
But yeah, Nate Solder is highest for. Number 3, Andrew Whitworth. A guy relatively, he was known with the Cincinnati Bengals, kind of blew up at the end of his career, was a guard first, then moved to left tackle. When he came to the Rams, it helped pave the way for that explosive offense that they had out there. And, putting up points. And he's also one of the big reasons why they were so highly successful running the ball. Not only is he a great road paver for Gurley, but he's also a great pass protector for their young quarterback in Jared Goff, and that offense got going out there. Now, he's one of the older guys on this list, but age don't mean a thing out here when you're a left tackle. He's still out here paving the way for these guys out there with the Los Angeles Rams. Number 2, I have Taylor Lewan. Another young guy on this list out there with the Tennessee Titans. He's a very tough, nitty-gritty, and he is willing to. The one thing I love about him, he's willing to fight and protect his quarterback at all times. A lot of people may not like the fact that he may be having a mean streak to him, but I love my offensive linemen to be having a mean streak to them. He will defend all his players. He will talk the smack. He'll be the first one in a fight to have your back no matter what. And that's the thing I love about offensive tackles. But that's all to do with outside of the game. But in the game, he's an animal, man. He will block. He deals with the Texans a lot due to the fact that they have such a great front seven.
Yep.
And also with the Jacksonville Jaguars as well too. And he can hold his own against those premier pass rushers they have in that division.
That's a rough division for an offensive tackle.
Yeah. And number 1, I believe, is Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith, to me, on any given day, first of all, it's the best offensive line in the country, and he's the best offensive lineman in there. You have to put him at number 1.
You have to.
Because, ever since he entered the league, it was just, he came in relatively young. At 20 years old, he was drafted out of USC. Played right tackle at first and moved to left tackle. And ever since he was at left tackle, man, he has held his own for the longest. He's always been the consistent piece there at that offensive line.
Yep.
Now that you added more with Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, and Collins, I mean, that offensive line is dirty, man. Up there, it is. I mean, you can put both me and you back there, and we get 500 yards maybe in the season easily. And he never played it down in the NFL. And I mean, he's so good. He when he was out injured, Adrian Claiborne got 6 sacks in one game. You know, like I'm pretty sure Adrian Claiborne maybe would have had 2 sacks, maybe, or maybe 1, or even 0. If he's number 1 on our list, maybe not even get touched at all. But Tyron Smith, I mean, he's the perfect all-around tackle. He's super strong. He's super athletic, way more athletic than people give him credit for. He can pass protect. He can run block. He can do it all. He's and he's also he's in the prime of his career too, as well, for the Cowboys, and he's going to be good for a long time. We're talking maybe retiring at like maybe 37. We're looking at a very long career, and he takes the mantle for us now as being the best. Well, for me, being the best tackle in all of the NFL.
Spoiler alert, me too.
Right. So what's your list, 5 through 1?
So 5 through 1. Number 5, I got Trent Williams, from the Washington Redskins. It's a solid pick right there. Number 4, I got Donald Penn, Oakland Raiders. If you look at the sack numbers among starting quarterbacks, Derek Carr was one of the least sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that has a lot to do with Donald Penn, so I'm putting him number 4. Number 3, I'm piggybacking off of you with Taylor Lewan from the Tennessee Titans. Solid tackle right there. Nasty, gritty, everything you said and more. So I got him number 3. Number 2, I have Nate Solder, longtime Patriot tackle. This dude. If you even look back in the Super Bowl, besides from the one turnover that Tom Brady had, which actually came from his right side.
Yeah, from the right side, not even on Nate Solder's side.
Tom Brady was virtually untouched the entire Super Bowl.
Yeah, and it was a good transition for the Patriots. I mean, you go from a guy like Matt Light, who was there for like 10 years protecting Tom Brady. Yeah. And they draft Nate Solder to be his heir replacement. And Tom Brady, I mean, good job by the New England front office in able to always have a guy to, always having a good left tackle to help protect their future Hall of Famer, the best ever player to come through that organization, to set him up well. Because we all know how do you get to Tom Brady is by rushing at him. So how you counteract that? You got to set him up with a bona fide left tackle and good offensive line work,
And for number 1, I got the same as you, Tyron Smith. I mean,
all-around beast.
I mean, all I can say is he's the best he's the best offensive lineman on the best offensive line. So, yeah, you have to give him that. And he helped the former Falcon get a franchise record in sacks. So, of course, I have to give him number 1 for that. Thank you, Tyron Smith, for not being in that game, by the way.
Right. That does it for our top 10 offensive linemen entering the 2018 season. Now, going in, we got the NFC North preview. Every time we get together, we do a new division. Last time we did the NFC South. Please feel free to like and check out that video as well, too, and give us any sort of feedback as well. And please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel while you're here. Give us any sort of questions, comments. Check out the Twitter handle. If there's questions, we know we cannot come up with all the questions and topics. Let us know if you want us to cover something else, and we'll be more than happy to do it for you. But now, the NFC North. Now, granted, this is an early preview. This is all after the draft. This is before preseason, and certain notable injuries happen. And all the free agents have now been signed. All the players have been drafted. Now this is early. We will touch on this maybe one other time during the preseason or before the season starts to give it a quick rundown. But as of right now, this is what we'll do. And let's do it from worst to first. Last time we did we did from best to worst. Now we'll go to the number 4 team. I'll start things off, and this is a surprise. I had the Detroit Lions being the worst team in this division at 6-10.
Wow.
My reason behind this is their biggest addition to the team is LeGarrette Blount. Now, LeGarrette Blount has had great seasons. I mean, he won back-to-back Super Bowls with 2 different teams, with the Patriots and then with the
2-time Super Bowl champion right there.
And with the Eagles. But my main thing is that's their biggest piece. It's him. It's LeGarrette Blount, a guy who's going to be your complimentary back to Amir Abdul. It's not a good... I mean, it's another weapon, yes, and maybe help you run, but still, they didn't add anything else. Now, granted, they didn't lose anybody else. They didn't have a big notable loss. They kept Ezekiel Ansah. I believe they franchise tagged him. He did have a down year, but I believe he's willing to bounce back. He's a very raw, athletic pass rusher. And they needed to have kept him, because if they lost him, I may have put in this team. I think he would have at least counted for 1 loss for the team. But, and y'all know you might say, oh, well, Matt Stafford's on the team. To me, Matt Stafford, can throw for 4,000, 5,000 yards. All he wants. That defense has not really improved. They had Darius Slay, and he burst onto the scene relatively, I believe, 2 years ago. This year was relatively a down season for him. But, I mean, he's still one of the better corners in the league, relatively unhurt as well, even though his name, Big Play Slay, sometimes he does get snagged on. But at the same time, that defense has not improved really that much to me. Neither has that offense. They still don't have a bona fide... they do, I still believe, have Golden Tate on the team. But other than that, their weapons aren't that well. And Matthew Stafford, even though since Calvin Johnson has left, has technically looked better because he doesn't force the ball anymore to him. But I just don't believe they've added enough to compete in this division, and especially the other teams have gotten better, like significantly better compared to compared to the Detroit Lions. Now, who's your number 4 team?
My number 4 team is the Chicago Bears. I have them coming in at 6 wins, 10 losses. I just think that Trubisky, he's just not going to cut it for me next year, I don't think.
You think he'll have a sophomore slump? Or like he won't necessarily progress to the 3rd pick overall, I believe, or the 2nd pick he was?
I can't see him living up to expectations as of now. I think that since they got a little bit more film on him, they're really just going to key in on this dude and they're just going to tee off on him. I really don't see the Bears getting far next year, so they're just going to have to wait a few years till maybe they can build a rapport and get a little bit better overall. But for me right now, they're the worst team in the NFC North, in my opinion.
Yeah, but great. I mean, I would have to say, though, because 3 and 4 are relatively close to me, and then 2 and 1 are just above the rest easily. Like I think though you can almost flip-flop those teams to being the winners, and you're going to hear why. Chicago Bears, to me, are my number 3 team, and I have them at 8-8. I'm a bit more optimistic than you. I think 8-8, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do have a losing season. Okay. But they have added so many pieces to their young quarterback. They're essentially giving him no excuses to be bad this season. Mm-hmm. With Allen Robinson signing him from the Jacksonville Jaguars, they finally get their number 1 because Kevin White, who they drafted a while back ago, has not produced to the level they thought he once was going to be.
At all.
They get a slot receiver in Taylor Gabriel. Adding small pieces like that to their repertoire. It may not be the big name signing, as people may think, but still a slot receiver, a relatively competent slot receiver. Then they had a guy, Aaron Lynch from San Francisco, who's somewhat been underrated at San Francisco. Has put up good numbers there, but now he will be the piece. Donnell McPhee was a good signing at the time when they signed him, but he has not sacked the quarterback more than 4 times each time he was there in Chicago, and they had to cut him and let him go. He was a good player, I believe, with the Baltimore Ravens. They signed him big money, and he just couldn't, and now they replaced him with Aaron Lynch. Biggest loss is nobody, really. They didn't lose anybody at all. They added more than they have lost. If they lost guys, it's not really notable free agent guys. Impact rookies for me on the team is James Daniels, offensive guard, offensive center, 6'4" guy who's extremely athletic, can play arguably all 5 positions on that offensive line, and you need to help protect your quarterback. Anthony Miller, wide receiver out of Memphis, one of my favorite players coming into the draft. A guy who I said, if you like Calvin Ridley out of Alabama, then there's no reason for you to criticize or hate a guy like Anthony Miller. He can do almost exactly what he does. He just played at Memphis. He didn't play at Alabama. He didn't play at a big-name school. Mm-hmm. And Raekwon Smith, their number 1 pick. And their first-round pick, the linebacker out of Georgia. You know how it is in Chicago. They love their linebackers. They've always hit on linebackers and running backs. They've always been good at that. Raekwon Smith is in the next line of being great linebackers there, I believe. And they surrounded him with a good front 7. As you can see, they have Aaron Lynch, Leonard Floyd, another Georgia guy they drafted high up. They have Akeem Hicks. They got their Eddie Goldman, and then a guy. They also drafted another defensive lineman. I forget his name, that they also got up there. I believe he went to the University of Florida. They have a great front 7, and I believe that they can go after the other teams out here. They don't really have much of a good offensive line, the rest of the teams in this, and I believe they can get after him. But the most important player is Mitch Trubisky, his year 2 development. He needs to, make that leap into a good quarterback to play to the level of where he was drafted at. And their wide receiver core needs to also perform well, but that usually goes hand in hand. And like I said, they have an upgraded front 7 to help that team out as well. Now, what's your number 2 team? Number 3 team, my bad.
Yeah. My number 3 team would have to be the Detroit Lions. I have them coming in at 8-10. It's
8-8.
8-8. I'm sorry, my bad.
That's all right.
I have them coming in at 8-8. It's not so much really like the Lions' fault that they're only 3rd on my list. It's just the fact that, the Packers and the Vikings are in their same division.
They're just on a whole nother level. Those 2 teams, I believe, they're just a really, great teams to be on. They're just very well stacked.
You have, arguably the best player in football on one of those teams, and then you have a very balanced, very stacked team, up-and-coming team that's in the same division as them. And then you got Matthew Stafford. He's a good quarterback, can give you 5,000 yards any season, but, the defense just doesn't help him out enough, He doesn't have enough weapons.
Been the case. That's always been the case since he's been at Detroit. It's just kind of like where he can put up all these godly numbers and throw ridiculous stats year in and year out. And it's just like, the defense, it's just like Aaron Rodgers outscored him. And now Kirk Cousins into the division can outscore him,
Yep, so it's I feel pretty bad for Matt Stafford. I think he's a good quarterback, but he just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. So yeah. I'm giving him number 3 in the division.
Right. Number 2, mine is the Green Bay Packers at 11-5. And you obviously down year last year, Aaron Rodgers went down to injury. He came back last year for a couple games because they had a chance to go to the playoffs, but ended up missing it. But this year comes back fully healthy, and he has a new toy to play with, and that's Jimmy Graham, one of the top 3 best tight ends in the league right now. They also have added Muhammad Wilkerson to that defensive front, next to, a guy like Mike Daniels they have up there. That's a good addition to their front 7. Biggest loss is Jordy Nelson, Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy, time to time. But the Packers, they always know how to get receivers, it seems like. They've always gotten guys like, Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson. Randall Cobb, believe it or not, out of that 4 guys I just named, was the one that was drafted the highest compared to all those guys. And all those guys have put up ridiculous stats, there at Green Bay, have all had over 1,000-yard seasons, have all had at least a double-digit touchdown season. Now you had a guy like Jimmy Graham to the mix. Aaron Rodgers didn't really have much tight end help. At the best, he had, they had the other Rodgers they had there for a bit, but now they have, Jimmy Graham, a bona fide guy. Another loss, they had Morgan Burnett, a safety, one of their better safeties to complement Clinton Dix. They need to find a replacement to him. Their most important player right now is Aaron Rodgers, hands down. We saw the big, the drop off from him to Brent Hundley. Brent Hundley was out there. I thought he would have at least stepped up to prove himself that, hey, like one of those backup quarterbacks that can prove himself that I can ball too. I can, maybe a team should trade for me. No, no team is trading for you anytime soon. Brent Hundley, I hate to say it, but it was a big drop off. I mean, you go from arguably the best quarterback in the game to, a guy who's just a competent backup, it seems like. Impact rookies on this team, Jazeer Alexander and Josh Jackson, two corners that are really going to help out this team a lot. They also drafted really well. They brought back Tramon Williams back to the team, a guy who also played really well that Super Bowl run, if you don't remember.
I remember
him, and he did really well there. And they add to, and you can never have enough DBs, Mm-hmm. There's 6 to 7 receivers on a team, and DBs are very versatile. You can play a corner, slot corner, outside, safety, strong and free. It doesn't hurt to have enough pass rush and enough cornerbacks. But I want to hear what your number 2 team is.
My number 2 team is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. I have them coming in at 11-5. I know they just probably got better with Kirk Cousins coming in, because I definitely think he's a better quarterback than Case Keenum. And, they got the running back who just had a pretty good year till he got hurt, Dalvin
Cook, yep.
Dalvin Cook's going to be better next year. I know the Vikings are coming, but I mean, I'll get to it when I get to my number 1 pick.
Go ahead.
We obviously know who it is.
Yeah, go ahead and I'd say my Green Bay Packers are the Green Bay Packers are at number 2. What do you think at number 1? What do you tell me about the Green Bay Packers?
I mean, number 1, it's got to be Green Bay. Whenever you got a guy with this type of talent, with this type of skill, with this type of heart, Aaron Rodgers, I can never pick against him. Aaron Rodgers just can single-handedly take over games. We've seen him do it by himself. This guy gets Hail Marys. There's nothing this guy can't do. I can't pick the Minnesota Vikings over Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers, time and time again, when he goes against the Minnesota Vikings, I've seen him just completely shred them.
Yeah.
So I just cannot pick against him single-handedly because of Aaron Rodgers. That's why I'm putting the Packers number 1.
Right. And respectively so, and my number 1 team is the Minnesota Vikings at 13-3. Their biggest addition is Kirk Cousins and Sheldon Richardson. 2 bona fide great guys, especially Kirk Cousins. Impact rookies. Mike Hughes, Holton Hill, and Jalen Holmes. These are guys that the Minnesota Viking fan base is going to get to know in the future. Their head coach, always loves to draft corners. When he was out there in Cincinnati, he was always drafting corners first in the first round, and he always puts his rookie corners though on an island, and he always tests them how much they can handle the pressure. And when you face Aaron Rodgers, and Matthew Stafford, mm-hmm. You're gonna face them in 4 games, a year, every year. He's gonna put them out there, but the Minnesota Vikings has a deadly front 4 right now. You have Everson Griffin, who we have rated on our top pass rusher list.
Yep.
Then you have Linval Joseph, a great run-stopping defensive tackle. You have, now Sheldon Richardson added to the mix as well there too, and Danielle Hunter, who's also an up-and-coming pass rusher there as well. The reason why I have them so highly rated is they have a defense that can relatively try, keyword try, to shut down Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. They have a lot depth at defensive back. They have speed and athleticism at linebacker. They can rush the passer and all that stuff. And then Kirk Cousins last year, the Minnesota Vikings last year went 13-3 with a least talented quarterback. Now, granted, Aaron Rodgers was hurt. And, and a lot of these other teams, Chicago Bears was in the transitioning year as well, too. But with a least talented quarterback, they went 13-3. Now they added a Pro Bowl level and a proven 4,000-yard passer to their team. They should win the division. I think that's their their goal this year is to win the division. They have to me, and they have to make a serious playoff push. Last year, I feel like was relatively a fluke year because Aaron Rodgers was hurt. You had the moment Aaron Rodgers went down, it should have been the Lions to win, to be quite honest. But the Minnesota Vikings stepped up. Their playmakers made all the good plays. Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, and all of them.
Not to mention the miracle they had against the Saints at the end of that game.
Right. And then you saw how it all caught up to them against the Eagles. They got blown out of the stadium.
The true colors came out. They just got destroyed.
Yeah. And then it's just like, and you obviously saw the better team won. That game wasn't a fluke. It was just like, that was to show that the Minnesota Vikings kind of relied on a bit of luck in the sense that Case Keenum outperformed way more than he should have. And also the fact that, Aaron Rodgers went down. The division was wide open for anybody. And also the fact that, they got, the missed tackle of Marcus Williams at the end of a game, won them a game.
The Saints definitely would have played a better NFC championship.
I would have believed so, that there would have been a more competitive. I still probably think the Eagles would have won ultimately, but it was just, you just handed, essentially the win to the Eagles while playing so poorly on all stages of the game, all three levels, whether it be offense, defense, and special teams. It was just horrible for the Vikings. Leaves them in a bad taste in their mouth, but at the same time, it's like, it's rare that you go 13-3 and you improve at quarterback,
Mm-hmm. They had the number one defense last year too.
And they retained all their guys and added Sheldon Richardson and more young cornerbacks to the team. It just, all you're doing is, and that's the reason why I have them such highly touted up there. But that's it for our NFC North preview, and that's it for today's podcast. Please feel free to leave a like, share it on all medias, Facebook, Twitter, and everything. That would be greatly appreciated. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, so that way you know when we post any sort of content up here. And we'll talk to you guys next time.